Okay, good afternoon. This is your lecture for week 6, which is pretty much the end of our class. The next folder will just contain the link for your last paper and to post it on Turnitin and your final exam. This week, though, I have a little bit of a different structure. You don't have any readings except the epilogue to do, and I am going to put a very short quiz up. However, the quiz is going to focus not on the epilogue but on some of your links. These are the ones that I definitely want you to read. I have the links divided, they all are active, and they're divided into categories. The first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 links deal with the independent living situation in the modern time period and dealing with issues, including the Care at Home and New Civil Right, which is an article from NPR, I believe, that discusses the Olmstead Act and this new right that disabled have to in-home care, which has led New Jersey into a couple of different programs that offer cash grants for the individual to hire whomever they want, or for families to use that money to stay together and not have to work another job if they need to take care of their disabled child, parent, sister, brother, whatever. So please read that article. Right underneath of it is a kind of follow-up article about Florida warehousing kids with disabilities. The next one is Balancing the Cost of Care, that talks about care for these individuals in this time period. And then we have a documentary that's an hour long from Frontline on PBS called Life and Death in Assisted Living. I want you to watch that. It's an hour long. In return for you watching that, I'm not having any readings in your textbook, as I said, except for the couple pages of the epilogue. And I think I'm probably not going to do a multiple choice quiz. Instead, I may just do a more intense journal for you to do. And in fact, I'm going to do a couple of these journals. There'll be 4 journals this week. Each of them will be worth 25 points, and they will count as your quiz, as a quiz for this week. I'm just not going to set them up. I'm going to set them up like journals instead of quizzes, but they'll each be worth. They'll be worth 25 points each for the total of 100. Excuse me. All right, and then you have an article called Disabled Americans Fighting for the Right to Save More Money, and that's about the fact that poverty and disability programs seem to go hand in hand, and that's really a big issue nowadays. The fact is that we force most disabled to live in poverty. And this is wrong. They should be allowed to work. They should be allowed to make money. They should be allowed to do stuff. Some states do have programs which allow for some money making. New Jersey, for example, has Workability. And this is a program in which disabled person can continue working, making up to $50,000. Actually, I think it's like $54,000. And still be on Medicaid. Now, you may say, well, why can't they afford their own health care? Or shouldn't their business be providing them with health care? The thing is, Medicaid isn't just health care. Medicaid is much more than that. The biggest item of Medicaid that makes it essential for most severely disabled to stay in is assistant care. Medicaid, because of the mandatory nursing home requirement has now come up with a in-home alternative. That's the Olmstead Act. This is extremely important because Medicaid pays for people to come and take care of the individual. This is essential. Even if you're working, if you try to imagine hiring someone full-time to come and get you out of bed and to drive you and to put you back into bed, give you medicine, that's a large portion of many people's salaries. This is why the disabled are the highest amount of unemployed in America. The reason is that we force them into this poverty. We force them to give up their jobs in order to get enough care to survive. So I guess what I'm saying is that, Medicaid is essential for most disabled to survive, to live at home, to be independent. And yet we kind of force it to go with poverty. So therefore, we're reinforcing this notion that those with disabilities are worthless and can't be productive citizens. 80% is the unemployment rate for the severely disabled. Now, some of those really can't work for one reason or another. Others are forced into this poverty because of fear of losing services, particularly Medicaid. And also a great many of them are in this predicament because employers will not hire them. I know myself, I've worked in academia my entire life. And academia, for the most part, is an easy place for the disabled to work. Why? Because academics are more likely to understand and to be willing to deal with it. Most academic institutions have been forced to comply with ADA for a very long time because of students. So often it's easier for teachers to go into that realm as well. That being said, I've been told by some academic individuals when I went to apply for a job that I was too big to fit into the room properly with my wheelchair. I've been told, there's no way you could handle a class. They'll walk all over you because you're in a wheelchair. Now, I've had plenty of times where I've been refused employment over the fact that I'm in a wheelchair, and the individuals doing the hiring did not believe I was capable of handling a classroom. That being said, this is where so much of the problem of employment with disability is. So that's part of what you're going to be reading. I have a couple of interesting articles, one interesting place about autism and kind of an answer to Autism Speaks called Carly's Voice, which deals with more of an independent living environment for those with autism. And then I move on to a couple of humor pieces. Having a sense of humor about disability is a blog written for the Huffington Post. But I also have a TED Talk for you guys to watch on disability and humor. Very important TED Talks. And this idea that you can be funny and still be dealing with disabilities, that there's a way to joke about it without being demeaning. So there's that element. I'm also going to put a couple of videos from a guy named Josh Blue, who is a CP comedian, won comic contest. But the two blogs I'm going to put up on comedy are also very interesting. And for those of you who are into the deaf culture and sign language, there's a great sign language performance of what's that guy's name? I can't think of the singer's name, but the song is F You, Fuck You. Really cute sign language performance. And then I have a Maria Palancos performing her element of the Vagina Monologues, also dealing with sex and disability. So I actually have 2 websites dealing with sex and disability, which I thought were quite interesting. And then I have 3 websites dealing with disability and athletics, as well as a couple little clips. So you'll be able to look at that as well and think about disabilities and sports. And then I have 2 on data, which are just kind of side stuff that you might want for your last paper. What I'm going to focus the journals on this week is you're going to get a journal on independent living. You're going to get a journal article on humor and disability. You're going to get a journal article on sex and disability, and you're going to get a journal on disability and athletics. That's 4 journals. Your 5th journal is going to be more of a thinking piece, in which I'm kind of just going to ask you to talk about some of the things that you learned from the different videos and your thoughts about the ending of our class, and what important elements did you feel were gone over and that you learned. So those are the 5 journals altogether of the week, something like that. So anyhow, my math is not doing well today. I wanted you to kind of view disability in a new way this week. I wanted you to think about things that we kind of ignore with disability. For example, we'll start with athletics. We tend to not view those with disabilities as athletes. And I'm going to put a couple of links on there for you to really think about. These are athletic people. In many cases, there's some wheelchair athletics that are really, really hardcore people. And I'm going to put a couple videos of a documentary out there, and I'm not sure if the whole documentary is available or not on YouTube. I'll look and see. But I know there are clips from it called Murder Ball. And Murder Ball really was a documentary that brought to light the Paralympics. Now, every 4 years, the Olympics is seen. And what we don't always know is that a week later, the Paralympics come in. Now, this isn't the Special Olympics where everyone gets an award and everything's cool and nice. These are hardcore athletes. The Paralympics is all about being an athlete. And they run almost the same sports that the Olympics do, except in their case, all of the athletes have one or more disabilities. And often those disabilities are mobility issues or limb impairments. Sometimes they're blind. And in particular, some of the wheelchair ones, the one I'm going to show you, Murder Ball. Murder Ball is a nickname for wheelchair rugby. And I'm going to put a couple of clips up there of wheelchair rugby for you, which is an intense sport. It is basically kill the guy with the ball with your armored wheelchair. So these guys play for keeps. The next one that we're going to be thinking about is a taboo subject, and that is disability and sex. For the most part in America, we treat our disabled by infantizing them, thinking of them as children. Well, you don't have sex with children, so there's this kind of taboo. And the taboo has a couple of different facets to it. One is the infantilization, the idea that the disabled are children. You don't have sex with children. Children don't have sex. That's one aspect. Another aspect is, you don't want them spreading their poor genetics. And this idea that they will be somehow hurting the genetic line is especially stupid if you think that many of the disabilities are accident related. And finally, there's this thought that has existed since early in the disability world, and that is that those with disabilities are sex maniacs, that they go over the top crazy. This is especially seen in those with cognitive disabilities. The idea that someone who is cognitively disabled will become a sex maniac if allowed to engage in that activity. So sex and disability has been a taboo subject for years. It's now starting to be faced. You've got a vagina monologue clip, and I'm going to put up at least one more, maybe two more clips about sex and disability. The at-home care, the idea of getting rid of any kind of institutional care, has been a big issue as well. You have a Frontline documentary on that. You have a couple of articles to deal with that. So, you're going to be looking at some interesting stuff this week. Hopefully you will find them interesting. You will enjoy writing about them. And you will begin to see disabled differently. The idea of seeing someone who's disabled as an athlete or as a sexual preacher it's been kind of an eye-opening experience for many. It's not something most people think about. So also, a couple of recommendations. If I can find Murder Ball, please say it. If you're going to be on campus, they have a copy. It might be worthwhile to check it out. Another one that I'd like to see you watch, if you can, is Sessions. Sessions is a film about a disabled man who decided to hire a sex therapist. And this is a true story. He actually did this. He blogged about it at the time. And he was disabled his whole life and had always been treated, as I said, many are treated, as a child. But he decides he wants to experience sex. So he hires this sex therapist to teach him about sex. And she does. It's played wonderfully by Helen Hunt, and I highly recommend it. All right, so I'm going to leave you off today. No quiz this week, extra journals. Please watch those different links. And next week you will have a final exam and your final paper due. We only have a couple of days next week to work with. We end on the 13th, I believe. Have a good weekend.